There is a quiet, devastating realization echoing through the households of hardworking people all over the world right now. You wake up early, you go to work, you pay your taxes, you try to put a little money away at the end of the month. You do not live a life of extreme extravagance. You are, by all traditional definitions, doing everything exactly the way you were taught to do it. You are playing by the rules your parents and your teachers laid out for you. And yet, every single month, the walls seem to be closing in just a little bit more. You look at the price of real estate, and it feels like a cruel mathematical joke. You look at your grocery receipt, and you wonder if there's been a mistake at the register. You look at your savings account, and despite the fact that the nominal number is slowly creeping upward, the actual power of that money, what it can actually provide for your family in the real world, is shrinking right before your eyes. I have spent the better part of 8 decades analyzing the architecture of wealth, the cycles of the global economy, and the invisible forces that silently transfer money from the working class to the ownership class. I am telling you today with absolute mathematical certainty that you are not imagining this struggle. You are not failing because you lack discipline, and you are not falling behind because you buy a coffee on your way to the office. You are failing because the rule book you were given has been burned. We have entered a period in economic history that I call the silent wealth transfer of 2026. The macroeconomic environment has structurally and fundamentally shifted. The strategies that built the middle class in 1996 or even 2016 are no longer just obsolete, they are actively toxic. If you continue to cling to the financial advice of the past, you are walking blindfolded into a buzzsaw. The good habits you were taught, saving paper currency, relying on a single salary, staying out of the equity markets to avoid risk, are the exact mechanisms that are currently engineering your poverty. Today, we are going to have a profoundly uncomfortable conversation. I am going to tear down the illusions that keep you trapped on the treadmill. I am going to expose the 3 specific financial traps of the modern economy, the behaviors that look responsible but are actually destroying your future. And then I am going to replace them with the exact unyielding blueprint that the truly wealthy are using right now to shield their fortunes from inflation and multiply their net worth while the rest of the world panics. This will be a long, dense, and demanding masterclass. It requires you to abandon your ego and look at your balance sheet with cold, clinical objectivity. But if you have the discipline to stay with me until the very end and the courage to execute the protocol I am about to share, you will completely rewrite your financial destiny. Let us begin by dissecting the beast. Why is the rulebook broken? The entire global economy runs on currency. For decades, the middle class was told that the ultimate symbol of security was a pile of this currency sitting in a bank account. But in 2026, we are living through the consequences of an unprecedented expansion of the fiat money supply. Governments around the world have printed trillions upon trillions of units of currency to fund deficits, fight crises, and service insurmountable national debts. When you print money out of thin air, you do not create new wealth. You simply dilute the purchasing power of every single unit of currency that already exists. It is the inescapable physics of supply and demand. If you have a pitcher of lemonade and you pour a gallon of water into it, you have more liquid, but you have destroyed the flavor. The central banks have poured oceans of water into our money supply. This is the invisible tax. It is a systematic, unlegislated confiscation of your stored labor. When you work for 40 hours, you trade your finite, irreplaceable human lifespan for currency. If that currency is depreciating at 5, 7, or 10% a year in real terms, the system is silently stealing your life force. This is the macroeconomic reality of 2026. You cannot vote it away, you cannot complain it away. You can only adapt to it. And to adapt, you must purge 3 specific traps from your life. The first trap, the hoarding of melting ice, saving fiat currency. The greatest financial sin of the 2020s is the belief that cash is a safe long-term investment. The financial industry loves to sell you the illusion of the high-yield savings account. They proudly offer you a 4 or 5% return on your money, and you feel brilliant for taking advantage of it. You log into your account, you see the interest payment deposit, and your brain releases a hit of dopamine. But you must look at the math. If your bank pays you 4% and the real rate of inflation, the actual cost of energy, food, housing, and healthcare is rising at 6 or 7%, your safe investment is generating a guaranteed negative real return. You are paying the bank a fee every single year for the privilege of holding your money while it evaporates. Cash is not an asset. Cash is a melting ice cube. If you leave it sitting in the sun, it will disappear. The wealthy do not hoard cash as an investment. They view cash purely as a temporary holding tank, a logistical tool used to facilitate daily transactions, and a strategic reserve of ammunition waiting to be deployed when the market presents an opportunity. You must transition your mindset from a hoarder of paper to an accumulator of hard, productive assets. You must own things that central banks cannot print. You must own productive businesses, real estate, and essential commodities. When the currency depreciates, the nominal price of these assets adjusts upward. They are a mirror reflecting the devaluation of the money. If you do not own scarcity in 2026, you will be crushed by abundance. Let me be absolutely clear. You must maintain strategic liquidity for opportunities and emergencies. I always keep cash available even though I know it loses purchasing power over time. Not because I love holding cash, because cash gives you options when others have none. In every market downturn, the best buying opportunities appear. Great businesses go on sale, but you can only take advantage if you have available capital. I recommend maintaining at least 6 months of essential expenses in highly liquid form, not invested, not tied up in assets that could take months to sell. This isn't money you're investing, it's insurance. It's buying power for emergencies and opportunities. It's what allows you to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. Yes, this cash will lose some purchasing power to inflation. That's the cost of security and optionality. It's worth paying. But anything beyond that shield must be sent out into the world to work for you. The second trap, the worship of the linear wage. From the time you were a child, you were asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The expectation is that you will find a job, secure a salary, and trade your time for a paycheck until you are too old to work. In a stable economic environment, a salary is a wonderful thing. In an inflationary environment like 2026, relying solely on a salary is financial suicide. A salary is linear. It is tied entirely to your physical presence and your endurance. You cannot work 25 hours a day. Your earning potential has a hard biological ceiling. Furthermore, wages are the notoriously stickiest part of the economy. They are the last thing to adjust to inflation. Corporations raise the prices of their products immediately to protect their profit margins. They raise their employees' wages only when they are absolutely forced to, and almost never enough to outpace the true cost of living. If your only source of income requires you to clock in, you are entirely exposed. You are fighting a war on a battlefield where the enemy has infinite reinforcements. You must break the link between your time and your money. You must build or acquire systems that generate cash flow whether you are awake or asleep, healthy or sick, working or resting. You must become an owner. When you buy a broad, low-cost index fund tracking the S&P 500, you are buying a fractional ownership stake in the 500 most powerful corporations in the world. You are hiring millions of employees, brilliant CEOs, and aggressive sales teams to wake up every morning and generate profits for you. You do not have to go to their offices. You do not have to manage their payroll. You simply collect the equity growth and the dividends. This is the secret of the wealthy. They do not work for money. They command armies of dollars to go out and capture more dollars. You must systematically convert the linear income of your salary into the exponential income of your portfolio. The third trap, the normalization of indenture, consumer debt. We live in a society that has normalized financial servitude. The marketing apparatus of the global economy is designed to make you feel inadequate and then offers you a credit card, an auto loan, or a payment plan as the magical cure for that inadequacy. The middle class has been trained to completely ignore the total cost of an item and focus exclusively on the monthly payment. This is the architecture of modern poverty. When you finance a depreciating asset, a luxury car, a vacation, a wardrobe, at 15, 20, or 25% interest, you are mathematically destroying your future. Compound interest is the absolute law of financial physics. Einstein reportedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. When you invest, compound interest builds empires. When you borrow for consumption, it builds prisons. There is no legitimate investment on earth that will consistently guarantee you a 25% annual return. Therefore, if you are carrying credit card debt while trying to build wealth in the stock market, you are bailing water out of a boat with a massive hole in the bottom. You are paying the bank a premium to look wealthy while ensuring that you remain permanently poor. You must view consumer debt with absolute visceral disgust. It is a parasite feeding on your life force. You must attack it with unyielding aggression. Sell the car, cancel the vacations, cut the subscriptions. You must liberate your monthly cash flow from the banks. The truly wealthy use debt exclusively as a tool of leverage to acquire cash-flowing assets, like a mortgage on a rental property where the tenant pays the interest. If the debt does not put money in your pocket, you eradicate it from your life. We have identified the traps. We have diagnosed the illness. Now we must administer the cure. If you want to survive the wealth transfer of 2026, you must adopt the architecture of accumulation. This is the exact unyielding protocol that separates the permanent ownership class from the permanent renter class. Phase 1. The ruthless expansion of the gap. Wealth is created in the margins. The speed at which you reach financial sovereignty is determined by one metric, and one metric only: the gap. The gap is the mathematical distance between your take-home income and your living expenses. If you earn $100,000 a year and you spend $99,000 a year, you are poor. You have no gap. You have no soldiers to send out onto the battlefield of compounding. If you make $60,000 a year and you spend $40,000, you have a $20,000 gap. You are wealthy in the making. In 2026, you must attack the gap from both sides with relentless aggression. On the expense side, you must conduct a ruthless audit of your life. Eliminate the ego taxes. Stop buying things to impress people you do not even like. The ego tax is the most devastating voluntary tax in the world. Drive a reliable used car instead of financing a depreciating luxury vehicle. Downsize your living arrangements if you are house poor. Cancel the subscription services you do not use. Cut the convenience premium for food delivery and pre-packaged goods. Frugality is not about deprivation. It is about the intelligent reallocation of resources towards things that actually matter, like buying your absolute freedom. On the income side, you must become a machine of skill acquisition. Do not ask for a raise. Make yourself so valuable that your employer has no choice but to pay you more, or the free market will gladly poach you. Learn high-leverage skills. Learn how to sell, how to negotiate, how to manage data, how to manage complex projects. Increase your income, but absolutely refuse to let your lifestyle inflate alongside it. Every new dollar of income must be funneled directly into the gap, and from the gap, straight into your ownership of productive assets. Phase 2. The systematic acquisition of the global engine. With your debts destroyed, your liquidity fortress built, and your gap expanding, you must transition from a consumer of goods to an owner of production. For the overwhelming majority of people, the most effective, mathematically optimal vehicle is a low-cost, broad-market index fund. When I evaluate an investment, I want to buy wonderful companies when they're priced like average companies. But for most individuals who do not have 5 hours a day to read annual reports, trying to pick individual stocks is a fool's errand. You do not need to find the needle in the haystack. You simply need to buy the haystack. When you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you are betting on American ingenuity. You are betting that tomorrow morning, millions of people will wake up and try to figure out a way to make their businesses slightly more efficient, slightly more profitable, and slightly more dominant. Over the past century, despite world wars, depressions, pandemics, and political turmoil, that bet has paid off spectacularly. You must automate this process. Human beings are biologically wired to be terrible investors. We are wired to follow the herd, to panic when we see danger, and to gorge ourselves when we see an easy opportunity. You cannot rely on willpower to build wealth. Set up a system where a percentage of your income is automatically transferred to your brokerage account and invested in the index fund the exact moment your paycheck arrives. The money moves before you can talk yourself out of it. The investments happen before emotions can interfere. You buy when the market is high, you buy when the market is low, and you never, ever stop. Phase 3. The mastery of inactivity. Once your automated system is running, you must execute the most difficult strategy in all of finance. You must do absolutely nothing. The financial media will try to terrify you. They will scream about impending doom, geopolitical crises, and economic collapse. They do this to generate clicks and to force you to trade, because Wall Street makes money on friction, fees, commissions, and taxes. You must unplug from the noise. Understand that volatility is the toll you pay to travel the road of compounding. A 20% market drop is not a catastrophe. It is a temporary markdown on the price of great businesses. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. You must become the most patient person in the room. Let me tell you how this has worked throughout my career. In the 1970s, stocks traded at single-digit PE ratios. I bought aggressively. Those investments compounded for decades. In 1999, I was criticized for not buying technology stocks. People said I was out of touch. A year later, the Nasdaq crashed over 70%. Those critics stopped laughing. In 2008, when everyone was panicking, I wrote an op-ed saying I was buying American stocks, not because I knew the bottom was in, but because prices finally made sense. Those 2008 investments have multiplied many times over. The pattern is always the same. Buy value, wait for fear, deploy capital when others are retreating, and then sit on your hands. The gains from occasional brilliant decisions far exceed the gains from constant mediocre activity. Studies show that the most frequently traded accounts dramatically underperform accounts that barely trade at all. Activity isn't progress. Often it's the opposite. Make fewer decisions, make them better, hold them longer. Phase 4. The intellectual moat. The final pillar of the architecture of accumulation is the one asset that cannot be inflated away, taxed away, or stolen. It is your own mind. I read every single day for hours. This isn't casual reading. This is focused reading daily. Annual reports, financial statements, newspapers, books, anything that expands my understanding of how the world works. When I started my career, I would read between 600 and 1,000 pages every single day. This habit compounds exactly like interest. Every day I go to bed a little smarter than when I woke up. Over decades, that daily improvement becomes an enormous, insurmountable advantage. In 2026, the market is ruthless. It pays for value, not effort. If what you do can be taught to a machine in a few seconds, the value of your labor is trending towards zero. To have pricing power, to demand a high salary or high rates, you must be scarce. You must build an intellectual moat around yourself. You must learn skills that are highly complex and deeply valued by the marketplace. When you possess a skill that only a tiny fraction of the global population can execute efficiently, you possess absolute pricing power. You can dictate your own salary. You can dictate your own working terms. Your personal earning power becomes the ultimate, unbreakable hedge against inflation. We're standing at a critical crossroads in economic history. The easy money and zero interest rate environment of the last decade is gone, and it is not coming back. The comforting illusion that a simple savings account and a mediocre job will guarantee a safe, prosperous retirement has been completely shattered. The trapdoor has opened, and those who refuse to change their behavior, who refuse to adapt to the new mathematical reality, are falling through. But you do not have to be a casualty of this great economic shift. The rules of wealth creation are not a closely guarded secret hidden in a vault. They are simply unpopular because they require immense discipline, extreme sacrifice, and the willingness to look entirely foolish to your broke neighbors in the short term. You must take radical, uncompromising responsibility for your own balance sheet. No politician is going to ride in on a white horse to rescue you. No central bank is going to engineer a monetary policy that suddenly makes you rich without effort. The rescue operation begins and ends with the person looking back at you in the mirror. Audit your expenses tonight with a red pen. Kill your consumer debt as if your life depends on it, because your financial life does. Build your defensive perimeter of cash until it is impregnable. Direct every single surplus dollar into the ownership of productive, cash-flowing global businesses, and then have the unbreakable stoic fortitude to let time and mathematics do the heavy lifting for you. The era of the absolute financial sovereignty is boring. It is remarkably slow, and it is absolutely guaranteed to work if you simply refuse to quit. The era of the fake rich is ending. The era of the rational accumulator is here. Which side of history will your balance sheet be on?